All right, my friends, welcome back to another episode of the Build Show podcast. That's right, my weekly time to get together with you guys and go deep. And I've got a really personal topic today for you today. This is an anniversary year for me. This is as 2025 hits. I've been in business 20 years now. But this is also two other anniversaries for me. This marks the 10-year anniversary of getting out of debt and being debt-free. And we're going to talk specifically about that. And this marks the 15th year anniversary of cementing massive debt in my life. So with that being said, I'm going to kind of rewind time and tell you a little bit about my personal journey, really my financial journey as a business owner. And, you know, when I do this podcast, I think of myself as your older brother, right? So I'm talking to my younger brothers, my younger sisters out there. I typically think that I'm talking to builders, but I do understand there's other folks that listen as well. So this story is really a builder warning story, but I think that other people listening will get some great sage advice out of this as well. With that being said, we're going to talk about debt. In my personal history of being really, frankly, on the verge of bankruptcy, what I did, how I got there, some lessons learned, and maybe some things that you can apply to your own lives. With that being said, from the Reisinger Build Studios in Austin, Texas, let's get going. All right, guys, before we jump into the podcast, I want to say a big thanks to two sponsors today's podcast. First off, Champion Power Equipment, longtime sponsor of the Build Show. And if you don't know these guys, they make a full line of generators. But I want to talk specifically about their permanent, automatic installed home standby generators. I have one at my house. I had one at my previous house, and we just installed their biggest unit, which is the 22 kW version now at the Reisinger Build project. So I have a multi-year history with these guys. In fact, I think I've got just about each one of their gas and propane powered. They make natural gas powered. They make battery generators. But specifically when it comes to a standby unit, a home standby unit, that's kind of the category name. This is a really big deal for a lot of people. When you think about hurricane season, which is right now, thunderstorms, ice storms, the aging infrastructure, heck, it doesn't even need to be terrible out to lose power. In Austin, Texas, a week ago, we had a pretty serious thunderstorm that included some hail, and a neighborhood that two of my good friends live in separately lost power for 5 whole days, just in the middle of May, not a hurricane season issue, just a bad storm, 5 days without power. And funny enough, that person is the new owner of the Reisinger Build, and they're moving in a week. So the timing was bad for them. Had that storm hit 3 weeks from now, they would have had their Champion 22 kW standby generator. And this is what happens when you're in an outage for those. The unit knows, hey, I don't have grid power anymore. The meter has stopped supplying power. And the automatic transfer switch says, hey, let's start up the generator. The generator fires up, and a couple seconds later, when it's running full speed, it transfers automatically the power from the meter from the city, which is out at this point and not getting power, to your home standby generator. So you're basically out of power for about 30 seconds. That's about it. At my house, it doesn't even stop the alarm clock from resetting back to the flashing. For whatever reason, my alarm clock still even works. I do have a very small battery operated, what do they call that? Uninterruptible power supply for my internet. So my internet doesn't have to reset. But basically within 30 seconds, you're up and running again. And that 22 kW on that 3,000 square foot house that I've got that's all electric, it's going to be able to easily supply the entire house. They basically won't have to sacrifice anything for a power loss. Absolutely fabulous. Now, there's a couple things you want to know about with these guys. They have this thing called Axis technology, which basically says to the various devices around the house, especially the high draw devices like your heat pump, your air conditioner, things like that. Hey, prioritize this circuit before that circuit. I don't want to get into all the specifics, but these guys have some really nice equipment. 10-year warranty, the longest in the business, 20% more fuel efficient than most of the competitors out there. And it's got a pretty unique 24-volt starting system, which will operate in temperatures down to 22 degrees. Really, really good airflow on their units, which leads to longer engine life. And the biggest thing I like about these guys, it's really good equipment, but it's actually very affordable. They really are pretty light on the budget compared to some competitors out there. And like I said, I've had it at my own personal house. I had it at my previous house, and they've been very, very reliable, durable, and efficient for me. Last thing I want to mention about these guys, go to homegeneratorselector.com. That's the Champion Home Standby Generator Selection Tool. And you can actually enter in all the specifics about your house. Hey, I've got gas heat or I've got electric heat. I use these appliances, and it'll help you select that generator. And don't forget about that new bigger size that they offer now. At my personal house, I have the slightly smaller size. I think it's a 14 kW. That 22 is a really big deal, and that's really going to allow even more people to select a champion in their life. Next up, I want to say thanks to Aquar as well for sponsoring. If you don't know these guys, I specifically remember running into them at the International Builder Show probably 8 or 9 years ago. They've been in business 9 years on the residential side, 20 years on the marine side. And I remember thinking that is a total game changer when it comes to hose bibs, because the first thing I immediately realized was that is so much better looking than most of the relatively crappy looking hose bibs out there. But there's so much more to Aquar. These days, they've got a full suite of things, including something new I want to tell you about that I just installed on a project. They have a hot cold hydrant. So if you've got a need for hot cold, let's say an outdoor shower, this is a fabulous unit because it's frost free, it's self-draining, and now I can put an outdoor shower really anywhere without the worry of, gosh, are the homeowners going to maintain this and drain that system down in the wintertime, because that often doesn't happen with beach houses or lake houses or really anybody that's got a pool and wants to shower off. This is a really nice unit. But frankly, I want one for my house, and I don't live on a beach. I don't have a pool. I want to be able to wash my car with warm water or wash my dog in the driveway and not have freezing cold water. So this is a really nice unit. They say that it only takes the plumber about an hour to hook it up. And for my nerdy friends out there, it's got 1/2-inch PEX expansion inlets. So that means this is a really good setup for me, because I tend to use PEX A expansion, Uponor PEX. It's set up right out of the box to use that. You can buy these guys almost anywhere. AQUOR is the name. If you just Google that, you'll find it. They sell them on Amazon. They're certainly going to be more expensive than the basics out there, but they're made from stainless steel. They're made to last, and they look fantastic. So big thanks to both Champion and Aqua for sponsoring. All right, guys, let's talk about the topic for today, which is really debt and what it's done to me over my lifetime, and frankly, use me as a little bit of a warning. Like I said earlier, I kind of consider myself a mentor to a lot of builders remotely, a lot of you that I've never even met. So think of me as your older brother who's sitting you down and saying, all right, younger brother or sister, here's the issue that I faced in my life, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a warning so you don't do the same thing. When I started Reisinger Build in 2005, I was new to Texas. I didn't know anybody here, and I moved here cold from another state. I didn't know contractors. I didn't know subs, and I certainly didn't have a pipeline of people that wanted to build a house for me. So the only way I knew of at the time to start a reputation and start a business was to do speculative homes. I've talked about this a bunch, so I don't want to belabor that point too much. But basically, I took a lot of risk doing that. I basically went to an investor and said, hey, here's what I'm planning to do. Here's the rate of return I'm going to give you. I went to some banks and said, hey, here's my resume. Will you loan me money to do this? I've got an investor that will provide the 20% down payment. And so I put all those parties together. And the issue was I put myself into a borrower position in a serious way. And not to get too personal. It's my podcast. I can get personal. I think some of you guys know I'm a follower of Jesus. I look to the Bible for wisdom in my life, and whether you believe the Bible's true or not, whether you're a follower of Jesus like I am, I think we can all agree that there's some good biblical wisdom out there. And this proverb I've come back to a bunch. It's Proverbs 22:7. It says, The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is the slave to the lender. Well, Matt 2005 had a lot of lenders, and frankly, it put me into enslavement. So for a couple of years, it worked out okay. You know, the market was pretty good in '05, '06, '07, at least early '07. I built my first speculative house. I sold it. I made a little bit of money. I basically made like $50,000 on that project where I was, you know, paying back my lender, paying back the bank, paying interest, paying all these people. So at the end of the day, I worked on that speculative house for, I don't know, 18 months and made a whopping $50,000, right? Not a lot of money for the amount of risk I was putting myself and my family into. My next project was a very large, very fancy house. I sold it to a California couple and, you know, seemingly was going to make a bunch of profit on this one. I was thinking I was going to make well over $100,000 in profit on that project. The problem was the economy went south while it was under contract, but before they closed. And they bought it in the kind of framing stage. So I had about 9 months between the time it went under contract and I got their deposit and the time it went to closing. Well, the whole world went to heck in a handbasket in the end of '07, early '08. The market just crashed. It was a perfect storm of badness when it comes to financials. And the whole time the customers were like, Matt, I don't know if I can afford the loan. I don't know if I'm going to make the loan on this, right? Luckily, the husband was in academics, and so he wasn't at risk in his salary, but the wife was. She was in the business world. They negotiated with me hard on a bunch of things, even though they were under contract. They threatened to basically abandon their deposit because they were worried the house wasn't going to appraise for what they had under contract for. And long story short, I basically made $25,000 on a like $2 million build at the end of the day. After paying everybody back, after doing all this work, it was just a total slap in the face. And at this point, I felt like I built a fabulous house, but I can tell you that my business acumen was pretty light. You know, I was not good at the numbers. I was, you know, I hadn't realized yet that I should hire outside help for a lot of things. I was still doing QuickBooks myself for the first, I don't know, 18 months of my business, entering things myself, reconciling myself. I had an accountant that helped me do taxes, so I wasn't going to go to jail. But I was just really bad at the numbers and, frankly, a not very good businessman. So now here we are. It's like, what is this now at this point? '08, '09. And I had another speculative project I'd started. This one now is the economy's just in awful shape. I'm really worried, like, am I going to be able to sell this when I'm done? And the basic numbers are, I had about $1 million into this project between the lot cost and the build cost, and I was hoping to sell it for $1.3 million. It was in an okay neighborhood in Austin, but not a fabulous neighborhood. So, you know, as the economy continues to get worse and worse, and I get close to finishing the job, I'm thinking, gosh, what do I do? Like at this point, I have 2 young children. I think I had a 1 or 2 year old and another kid, my second kid on the way. And the economy's in terrible shape. I'm not getting any bites on my sign in the front yard. I think I gave it to a realtor for some period of time. Nothing. I keep lowering the prices on the build as I finish it now, and I kind of stage it. And again, I'm still paying my lender back on a monthly basis, right? Because when you get a construction loan, you're paying interest only, so you at least have an interest payment every month. You're not even paying off the principal. And as time went on, I mean, it just got worse and worse. I finished the house, and it was basically on the market for 2 years, unsold. You know, every single month for 2 years, I'm paying the interest payment on it. I have nobody in the house renting it, right? It's just interest payments. I'm over there every Saturday mowing the lawn. I'm over there on a weekly basis cleaning it and making sure it looks good for open houses, the whole shebang. And in the meantime, because I'm not making any money on this project, and I barely made any money in the last 2 projects, I think I had, what did I have in the bank? $65,000, let's say, when I started the company, because I'd sold a house out of state and I was renting when I first moved here. And then I bought a house and did a small remodel on it for my family to move into. So my savings is gone at this point now, right? And I'm paying this monthly interest. I had a paying client at that time, this couple named Stan and Catherine, and I had a second paying client on the way. And long story short, I sold that house for $750,000 when I had $1 million into it. So when I sold it, I was able to pay off my bank loan, but I was not able to pay my investor back. The investor had given me about $250K on an investment on this project, and it was actually 2 lots, and I'd start building on one house. So I don't need to get into too much of the specifics, but 2010 or 11, I'm at this point where I've got $250K of debt that I owe the investor, and I also had about más o menos 50 grand in personal debt, basically my credit card debt, as I wasn't able to pay myself during this time. And my wife was working and making money, which was fabulous, but it wasn't enough to pay all our bills, right? So I had slowly just kind of run up my credit card. So at this point now, I guess we're at 2011 maybe, I cemented, when I sold that house, $300,000 in debt. 250 to a specific individual, 50 to basically Chase Bank through my credit card, or I think I had 2 credit cards actually that equaled 50, and then I still had a mortgage to pay as well. And another side story is I had purchased during the kind of boom time a rental house. I was thinking that I was gonna build up this portfolio of rental houses. The Robert Kiyosaki book. What's it called? Rich Dad, Poor Dad, where he's like, oh, you should get 20 rental houses over time, all paying you this fabulous income. And then as you retire, you sell off 10 of those rental properties, use the income to pay off the other 10. And now you've got 10 houses that you own debt free and they get rental income. Well, that's great and all, but what happens when things go south? And for me, when things went south during that kind of recessionary time, this is like 2009, I've got a payment on a house I can't sell, basically a second mortgage. And I had a rental house that the economy was really bad. My tenants moved out in the middle of the night. When it was empty, someone broke in the next day and smashed the back sliding patio door. So I had no income on that house. I still had I don't know what it was, maybe a $1,500 payment a month on this house that no one was living in. And now I had to pay a couple grand to replace the door. And all this is happening as, I'm up to my eyeballs in debt. Like every week I'm like, how am I going to pay these bills? And in the meantime, I really didn't want to not pay off my debt, right? I really felt like it was really important for me to pay that debt off. And this is also part of my personal faith and kind of some of my personal journey. But I didn't want to declare chapter 11, but I got to tell you, I was like this far from it. This is the time of my life where I really learned about, if the Lord's Prayer that you say in church, give us, part of that is give us this day our daily bread. When you work for another company and you have a paycheck, I got to be honest, that for years, that didn't mean anything to me. Like when I worked for other builders for 10 years, you're praying this, give us this day our daily bread. You're like, well, yeah, of course, my daily bread's coming from that check that I get on the 1st every month. So, thanks a lot, Lord, but I got it. This company's giving me a check. When you work for yourself, when you're in charge of your income, and when there is no income, let me tell you, this is the time when you get faith. It's like that old saying, there's no atheist in the foxhole. When you're getting shot at, all of a sudden you have a lot of faith. And this is my moment in my life where, I'm not a veteran. Thank you for all our vets who've been out there putting their lives in the line, our police officers, our firemen. I've not done any of those jobs, but I can tell you this was that moment in my life where I was like, oh my gosh, I have nothing personally left. I'm 100% in debt. My wife, I remember, specifically called me one day and was like, we got to pay the nanny because, I worked and I'm coming home, and I went to get money out from our debit card. This is the time when we're still using cash and debit cards. and she was going to pay the nanny $300 that she owed her for 2 days work or whatever it was. And I had $10.38 between my savings and my checking account. And I was like, okay, I'll figure out what to do. And I actually don't remember exactly what happened that specific day, but I can tell you, I remember many, many days where I had bills to pay on a Friday, subcontractors that bills were due, or a payment on that loan that I was paying to the bank, or later when I had that debt, paying that individual back that I owed, which by the way was a $7,000 a month payment that I started paying in 2011, and I think I finished it in 2015. That's my 10-year anniversary here in 2025. That was a really painful payment every month, $7,000 out the door for debt service to pay off this amount of debt from a spec house that I had done. And that brings you back to that proverb 22:7. The borrower is the slave to the lender. I felt like a slave, right? I was going to work for no money, basically, just to pay off someone else's money that I owed them. It was a terrible situation. And at the office, we had kind of a way to relieve the tension, which was that debt payment, that $7,000 a month. We called it Chuck. It was our terrible employee that we couldn't fire. I couldn't just say, Chuck, you're fired. You're terrible. And now I've got my $7,000 back because I'm not paying Chuck. No, Chuck didn't do any work. He was awful, but I still had to pay Chuck every single month. So when we finally fired Chuck, we actually had a party at the office. We had a cake and we got tacos in 2015 when we finally paid off that last $7,000 payment and we were out of that big mountain of debt. I guess my point here is on all this, be really, really cautious about how much risk you put yourself and your business into. Contentment in life is something that's learned, and it's not always American to be content. We've got ads bombarding us every single day on why we need a new pickup truck or why we should build a bigger and better house for our families. And frankly, the Build Show probably hurts that rather than helps that. We show you lots of really cool stuff on our videos, and it's intended for your homeowners, not for you. So I just want to tell you guys that contentment is hard. And I've struggled with that. I would tell you that one of my big sins is materialism. I always want something cooler or better or different. But to do that with debt is really a problem. And for me, another part of this program that I don't think I've really talked about a whole lot in public, in 2006 or 7, I took out some money from my retirement account and got a buddy to co-invest with me. We bought a big piece of property that I thought I was going to be able to subdivide into 2 lots and was going to be a big home run on development. And I actually paid an architect to design a house for me and my family. It was a big, 4,000 square foot house that I was going to start building in 07 or 08. So I was going to subdivide the lot, and I paid a bunch of money for architectural plans, and then the economy went south. And not only that, I ran into several roadblocks that I thought weren't going to be a problem and turned out to be big problems. And so here I owned a lot that was going to be 2 lots. I was going to subdivide it, and one of them was going to be mine. And to be honest, what a blessing that didn't come through. Had I subdivided that and built a house for myself and started it right as the recession was hitting, I probably would have been chapter 11, frankly. So at the time I'm thinking, oh, this is terrible. What's happening? This is awful. But as I look back on it, I go, what a blessing that God was like, no, you're not going to do that. We're not going to allow the city to, we're going to throw up these roadblocks so you can't subdivide this. So in the end, I did end up building a house for myself, but it wasn't until I was substantially out of debt. I think I told you I went out of debt. I got out of debt finally and paid off all my debt in 2015. I have 0 debt now, except for a little bit of house payment, which Dave Ramsey would tell you is okay. Not great. I do want to pay that off, but that's the only debt in my life. I also have no business debt. We don't buy any trucks around here without paying cash. We don't buy equipment without paying cash. And we don't invest in anything in the Build Show without paying cash. I mean, the Build Show has been 100% self-funded. I'm the majority owner of the Build Show and Build Show Network. And we've spent a lot of money on web development, on all kinds of different things. We've grown quite a bit, and certainly we do make money. But I've got a lot of my own personal money invested in that. But what I don't have is debt. And that's a really big deal for me. And I'm really thankful that we've been able to be debt free. So, debt free personally, 2015. I didn't do my house until 2021. And I was able to pay cash for the lot. So I had no lot debt. And then when I went to get a construction loan, it was much, much easier because I owned the lot free and clear at that point. Now, at this point, I do have a loan on my house. I still owe $400,000 on my house, but it's appraised for and is worth well over $1 million. So, in terms of kind of debt to value ratio, I feel pretty good about that. I do have a plan to try and pay that off before I turn 60, so that I'm not going into my retirement years at some point and still have house debt to pay off. So that is a good thing. But I think my point that I really want to make for my younger builder friends, or maybe my older builder friends, is we need to be really cautious about wanting what our clients have. For years I'm building these fabulous houses, and I'm thinking, gosh, I really want a fancy house for my clients. I deserve this. I need this. And a quick side story, there was a builder friend of mine during that time, that kind of pre-recession period, who was younger than me, that I really idolized. He seemed to have everything together. He was wearing suits to work. He was the president of our association. He drove a Range Rover. He had built a fancy house for his family in a fancy part of town. And I really thought, gosh, what am I doing wrong that I can't be like this guy? Like, I really idolized him and thought that he was doing it. Turns out he was doing it through debt. That was a leased vehicle. He owed a lot of money on that house. He had several spec projects going, not just one like I had. And when the recession hit, he crashed hard. He declared Chapter 11. 2 or 3 subs that we had in common were not paid. In fact, my roofer and my mason got stiffed for over $100,000. He didn't have the money to pay it back, and he wasn't able to put on a payment plan. No judgment to him, right? That if anybody listening declared Chapter 11, I'm not declaring judgment on you. I want you to know there's forgiveness. But I do want you to know that part of my problem during that time was I felt like I deserved it. I felt like I was in a position that I should have a big fancy house for my family, and I should drive a nice car. And that is not true. We don't deserve it. And you don't need a fancy house, and you don't need a fancy car. And divorce and your family not having you around is not worth it, right? I'm thankful to say that I'm still married 26 years later. And my wife and I had to frankly go through some marriage counseling, and a lot of that was because of debt and because of the position I'd put her in, where, not only was I not making money, but I had massive debt to pay off. And that was hard. That was hard on my marriage. That was hard on my time as a young father, on my family. I look back on those years and think, gosh, I could have avoided a lot of that. And in the end, everything happens for a reason, and I don't. Well, that's not true. I do have. I was going to say I don't have any regrets. I do have regrets. For sure, I have regrets. But in the end, I was able to pay 100% of my debt off. No sub was left unpaid. All the banks were paid. My investor was paid. And I feel like I've come full circle on contentment. I have a fabulous family. I have a beautiful house that I was able to build eventually for my family. I just want you to know, when you look at Build Show contributors, when you look at your friends in the industry, when you look at your clients, be really, really cautious about what you desire personally and weigh that against where you are. And, little steps do mean a really, really big deal in the end, right? It's much, much better over time to accumulate wealth than have a big home run. And I wanted those big home runs with those development projects. I was expecting to make big 6-figure incomes all at once. And when those big 6-figure incomes didn't come, I was in trouble because I had amassed all that debt and there was no money to pay off those debts. Gosh, we're going long. I'm at 30 minutes here. So I want to say thank you guys for allowing me to get a little personal and talk a little bit about my faith journey. I think you guys know and have heard me talk about it. My faith in Jesus has gotten me through a lot of hard times in life. And if you're interested in learning more about that, I'd love to talk to you about that personally. Another book that I'd recommend, or two books that I'd recommend for you if you're interested. One book that really helped me through that period was by this guy, Patrick Morley, and it's called The Man in the Mirror. It's probably $5 on Amazon. It's an old book, and it's still fabulous to this day. I've reread it several times. The Man in the Mirror. If you look that up on Amazon, Patrick Morley, fabulous book. And another book, if you're not a Christian and you're interested in learning about, this thing true? Is the Bible true? A book that I'd highly recommend is by this author, C.S. Lewis, is his name. And there's a book called Mere Christianity. Again, an older book. It was written probably 75 years ago. But a fabulous case from an atheist who converted to Christianity on, is this thing really true? And does this really mean anything? My faith has gotten me through some really hard times in life. And we don't get into that a whole lot. We try to make the Build Show non-religious, non-political. We don't ever get into politics, frankly. But I do think that as we talk about something so personal like debt, that I would be remiss not to tell you my personal faith journey and tell you how I got through those times. They were some really difficult times, and I'm really thankful I'm in a different place. And hold me accountable. Don't allow me to become so discontented with what I own that I'm willing to put my own family and my own business in debt again. That's not a place I want to be. And I want to be content with what I've got, because I think that that's a good general wisdom for people to remember that, when we desire something so much that we have to have it, then all of a sudden we're really willing to sacrifice things that we shouldn't be. And sacrificing your family, your marriage, your personal time, frankly, even my health. I gained a lot of pounds during those years because of the stress. And I'm thankful to have trimmed up again a little bit too. It's allowed me to realize I can live a long, healthy life. My dad had a heart attack and nearly passed away at like 65, right at the time of retirement. He was relatively overweight / sorry, Dad, you were very overweight. And I don't want to be that. I want to be around for my grandchildren, and I want to be healthy to be able to throw my grandkids in the air and wrestle around with them. So that's really important for me, and health is another form of wealth. All right. That being said, guys, I really appreciate your time. Go check out those books if you're interested. Amazon will find those for you. And in general, I really appreciate your support of the Build Show. And specifically, if this podcast has been helpful for you, would y'all do me a favor? If you're still listening at 33 minutes in, you're one of my podcast faithful. Give us a rating on whatever platform you're on. Like if you're on iTunes, where I listen to my podcast, jump on there and give us a 5-star rating and write something about how this podcast has been helpful for you. Those ratings allow us to go up in the rankings. Believe it or not, download time and watch time doesn't rank you higher. It's your ratings that do, and your comments. So if you guys would do that for me, that'd be a big personal favor. I would really appreciate that. With that being said, guys, follow us on the Facebooks or the Instagrams. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on the Build Show podcast.